Hello?
Hello, is that John?
It is indeed.
It's Steve Hackett here.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, John. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, on this lovely morning.
What's it? Is it not good where you are at the moment? It's fairly grey here, but looks, not quite full monsoon.
Well, it's been raining steadily all morning here, actually.
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah, well.
Still, it is Britain, isn't it? So.
It is, yeah. Good recording weather, I always think, when it's pouring down, which it is most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, where would we like to start? How about we start with your album, and that seems a good place to start, doesn't it?
Yeah, that sounds fine to me.
So, I mean, it's a double album as well, isn't it?
It is really, yes. It was the special edition. So it seems to have become, by default, the regular edition because fans have been buying that one as opposed to the other. So they went for that one in droves. I did warn the record company at the time. I did say, well, actually, they're probably likely to want to have the full whack. So maybe in the future we won't bother with the the single edition. They don't want less; they want more.
Well, exactly. I'm the same, I will buy the special editions because of the extra tracks. I mean,
yeah,
but that's what most fans do, I think.
Yeah, indeed.
And
exactly, yeah.
I mean, it's quite a varied album as well.
It is, yeah. There's a lot of different stuff on it. It comes from everywhere, yes, from Timbuktu to Inverary and all the rest. Yeah, there's a lot on it. There's a lot of different styles. I've had that kind of pan-genre approach for quite some time now. So when I do rock albums, I try and make them as broad as possible, so they're not just straight, if you know what I mean. Yeah,
definitely. And this is it. I mean, you don't want to get stuck in the same place, do you? And
exactly.
Churn out the same thing all the time. And I mean, I personally, I think it makes it interesting because the album takes you on a musical journey, if you say.
I agree. Yes.
And, of course, touring the album, this is the second leg of your UK tour, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it is really, yeah. We did 4 dates, I think it was, just before Christmas, and then we did some European stuff after that, and so we've come back to the major amount of it is this side of Christmas. And
what are your plans sort of after that? Are you going back to Europe or around the world, or?
Well, yeah, after that, everything to do with Shrouded Horizon, we're going to be doing that. In a way, we're going to be touring that throughout the year in different parts of the world, but at the same time, I've got the Hackett project coming out with Chris Squire at the end of May, and I'm working on some Genesis re-records with a bunch of salubrious pals, so that's taking up a lot of my time as well. So yeah, there are about 3 different things on the go at the moment, and then of course I'm thinking about beyond that, getting back to a successor to Shrouded Horizon. So
keeping busy then?
Yeah, it keeps me busy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Chris Squire, of course, is guy from Yes, isn't he?
That's right. Yes. Yeah, Chris Squire from Yes. Who's been a pal for quite some time now, and so yes, we've done an album together, which his wife suggested the title of Squire and Hackett, and it seems to have stuck because the news went out as that, and so meanwhile we haven't found a proper name for the band, or project, so it's come out like that, It's is there a Scracket in the house or Scracket Mania, however you like to interpret it, but it was a bunch of pals who got together who did this kind of stuff almost in their spare time as an afterthought, but it seems to have taken off within the industry. There seems to be a buzz for it. So even though no record buyer has heard a single note thus far, yeah, that's out there. Whether you regard it as a side show because he's very busy with the Yes thing and I'm very busy with my band and other projects, remains to be seen. I'll be interested to see how people respond to it. It's quite different from the usual kind of progressive stuff Most things are in 4/4. You can tap your foot to most of it, and it's not as if there are indecipherable time signatures on it. There's a little bit of that, but we've kept that down to a minimum, really, to make it easy to digest.
Actually, I must say it's sounding more and more interesting as you talk about it.
Yeah, well, I think we've tried to. I suppose naturally there's an aspect of previous histories that get referred to, but in the main, it's got its own feel, and I think that's a good deal more relaxed than most people would be expecting. You know, with the sort of a hybrid of Yes and Genesis. What would that sound like? You know, with those influences. They'd have a pretty fair idea that it'd sound a bit like Supper's Ready or something off of Relayer by Yes, but actually, I think that it sounds probably a good deal more modern than that. Even though I love, you know, those things that are held in affection and have been for a long time by fans. So that there's a nod to the past rather than it being steeped in it.
Yeah, I get exactly what you mean, and I mean quite a lot of albums I've heard. Yeah, I get exactly what you mean, and I mean quite a lot of albums I've heard. You know, these side projects and things, as you say, when a group of pals have got together and recorded something sort of spontaneously.
Yes,
it usually comes out really very good.
Well, it's funny that, you see, because writing with Chris and writing with Roger King, who were involved with that, the interesting thing there was nobody stood in each other's way. They didn't say, oh, no, my bit's better than your bit. We just added to it. We just thought, okay, here's another bit. We think this can work. We'll just add to it and we'll extend the stuff. So it grew organically like that, you know, rather, as I suspect, you know, things that happened in the past. So rather than thinking, oh, we'll do this, here's the single, got to pare that down, you know, got to cut that back, you know, 3.5 minutes, all the rest. No, we didn't do that. We thought, let's not also go the route of a complete opus and concept and all the rest. Yes, try and keep it light, like an hors d'oeuvre rather than a 15-course meal. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine, you know, and as I said, it's that kind of thing that is going to keep people interested.
Yeah, exactly. More of a prawn cocktail than a Vindaloo followed by a schnapps chaser.
Yeah. Although, you know, there are people that like Vindaloos with schnapps chaser.
Well, indeed, yes, exactly, yes. The Germans, for a start, yes. Yeah, indeed.
Okay, and of course you've got a new single coming out as well, haven't you?
There's that, yes, there is, yes. Yeah, there's Till These Eyes, and there also, I think we did a radio mix of Into the Night.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so I think at some point there's going to be an A and B side. I find it hard to keep up with the record company because they've got so many ideas at the moment, which is very nice. So yeah, Till These Eyes, which is a more subtle song. So we're kind of keeping it coming, really, in lots of different areas.
Yeah, and you know, when I actually listened to Till These Eyes, it surprised me how radio friendly it was.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, I think music is so subjective. Everyone's got their own take on who's come up with a great song and what's a great singer and all of these things. And at the end of the day, I'm always saying, well, yes, that's just opinion. You know, people talk with great prejudice about the things that they hate. Someone was talking about Boney M recently, and I keep thinking, well, yes, but they sold a lot of records, so you know, it obviously resonated with a public who were perhaps preteen, perhaps, but you know, that's not to knock the whole kind of Yellow Submarine type of song. You know, as soon as you hear it, you just know that you know, every 3-year-old can relate to that.
Yeah.
In the bath. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course we've all been sung Yellow Submarine while being in the bath, yes.
Exactly, yeah, well, exactly, that's how many of us were raised. Well, at that age, of course, I was 16, of course, and I hadn't given up baths, but I think I was taking more baths by then, but less submarines in the picture.
Yes. I mean, my mum was a huge Beatles fan anyway, and I kind of missed the Beatles because I wasn't born until the 70s, so...
Right. Yeah.
But...
Yeah. But you find Beatles references cropping up all over the show with bands that have followed.
Yeah.
So the form hasn't changed that much from the way the Beatles wrote songs. Things sound different with different technology, of course, different sounds, but or different EQs on things. Hi-hats started to sound much brighter. The moment people started using samples, machines, but essentially it's the same. It's the same idea, and you can see the thread of everything. You look back at the Beatles, and you find the Everlys in there, and every other Harmony band. So I think the older I get, the more I think, don't have any prejudice against any one particular form, because just when you thought you didn't like something in a particular style, someone will come along and do something really great, and you'll be thinking, oh, actually I do like classical music, because I like, for instance, Ravel's Bolero, or In the Hall of the Mountain King. A lot of rockers seem to like that, or a bit of Prokofiev. They'll like that because it'll be more percussive and it'll be closer to rock. So you can't dismiss the whole of it as powdered wig material.
No, and my tastes are very eclectic. So.
Yeah, well, I think the older I've gotten, the more I've realised that was the case. I mean, when I first started out, I was listening to nothing but guitars. And there came a time about the age of from 12 to 16, or do I mean 12 to 18, I just listened to guitars. And if someone said, oh, that's got a good beat, hasn't it? I thought, what are they talking about? What's that? Oh, that's the drum, yes. And I was just so tuned into everything from Dwayne Eddy to Hank Marvin to all of the 60s guitar heroes. And I always just waited for the guitar solo.
Yeah, I mean, actually, in my younger days, I was very much into
the 60s guitar heroes, and I always just waited for the guitar solo.
Yeah, I mean, actually, in my younger days, I was very much into heavy rock and nothing else. And I hated everything else.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think you do. You want to champion something, and especially if you're playing it for a living, you want to get good at one thing, and your selective hearing is working overtime.
Well, this is it. And then as I've got older, I've found a deeper and deeper respect for all musicians, and that's the way it is.
Well, I think it's a good way to go. I mean, last night I was dreaming about Chopin, for instance.
Oh, right.
I'm reading a book on Chopin and Beethoven. So I'm thinking that these guys obviously must have worked endlessly on the detail of pieces that have survived for a very long time in the affections of listeners. And sometimes it's just one note changed on something that can make all the difference. Sometimes just the bass note, even if the chord remains the same. And styles are born on just shifting the odd note here and there.
Well, this is it. Or even, a change from a major chord to a minor chord can just affect the whole of the music.
Yes, it can, yes. I've been caught out with that. Sometimes I've written a chorus in a minor key and someone said to me, God, that's such a downer, isn't it? Why don't we try it in a major? And I think, oh, absolutely right. And it's usually a keyboard player that'll change my mind there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's it. And that's, that's the best way, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, no, I like to be proved wrong. I love someone to kick in and say, oh, this can be improved by doing the following. I wish it was the better sound button. Can you give me a better sound? Can you press the better sound button? And often these things do exist, better sound buttons. that warm up, give it extra distortion, bit of compression, and suddenly everything comes alive. We got those things these days, but in the old days, we used to have to think much more about it. We didn't have the choices that are available today. You had less choices because technology gave you less. But I suspect that writing was probably more important. Just like with black and white movies, if it's going to be a classic, it's probably going to be something with a great story, like Now Voyager, Betty Davis, as opposed to a modern movie which is pyrotechnics or CGI, explosion, all the rest.
Yeah,
all those.
All the visual effects, and not much of the plot.
Yeah, a bit like now. The other thing about progressive music, people that don't like it, I think it's because there's often too much punctuation and not enough statement. It's nice to have a melody to get your whistling sorted. If you can hum it or whistle it, that helps. I don't think it really helps very often when there's half a phrase and already you're going, find the one. But I understand it. I understand progressive that came, in a sense, from European roots with Bartok and folk tunes and moving the meters around. And on the other side of the pond, you've got the big bands and that kind of syncopation, punctuation, and all of it had its effect and still does on everything that we do.
Exactly, you can always trace it right back to its roots, can't you? No matter what you listen to. Oh
yeah. There's always a previous model.
Yeah.
With a tune.
And speaking about that, is there anybody around nowadays that really gets you going? Do you really like them?
Yes. I've met Joe Bonamassa a couple of times.
No.
And he said, "Oh, I used to do a version of Los Endos Genesis tune." And what I find interesting is that he'll often take a very basic approach to stuff, but because he gets such a great guitar sound, it's a bit like bringing you back to your roots. So I think, he's a little bit like the new Hendrix, in a sense. If anyone, and maybe he would hate to be called the new Hendrix, but I've been waiting for someone like him to come along for a long time, who's working in the blues, but making it really work very well. And he's so very busy doing lots of different things. So I think I'll always applaud someone who's involved in a lot of things, who's obviously working hard, not resting on the laurels, and just wants to get the most out of himself or herself, for the amount of time that we're on this planet of ours.
Yeah, I've met Joe myself, and he's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet as well, isn't he?
Very nice, very self-effacing, very. He'll always tell you the influence with everything. He admits it straight away, so there's never any criticism of, doesn't that sound a bit like? No, he's always, that was the song. I based it on that one, and I did this. And sometimes it's part of the blurb, and you think, well, that's refreshing, isn't it? He's not, I think originality perhaps is less important than authenticity. If you're truly moved by something, that's got to communicate.
Actually, I'm with you on that. I think I get a lot more out of music if
really moved by something. That's got to communicate.
Actually, I'm with you on that. I think I get a lot more out of music if I believe it. If it's honest.
Yes, honesty and energy. Sorry, energy and honesty is good. Authenticity. Yeah, I definitely applaud that. I want to feel that it's really felt. I want to feel that every note is really felt. It doesn't matter how subtle or basic it is, as long as it's really felt. I think, here's some great energy from people.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I only actually heard Joe for the first time probably 3 years ago.
Right.
And and I went to see him live that year, and I just stood at the front of the stage, and my mouth literally dropped. It was, really awe-inspiring. But there we are. I'm a great worshipper of the six-stringed.
Right. Yes. See, the nice thing is, he's got masses of technique, but he chooses not to keep showing it to you. So it means that the things that he does have got pace. And I think many guitarists who can play fast feel the need to keep showing that to you. And it's important to know when to desist from the endless salvos and cadenzas that in classical music it's a given that you get up to that speed. That's the whole point. But the difference between a virtuoso and a composer or a writer is that he's not laying it on you the whole time.
Yeah. I think that's kind of why I like the prog rock as well. It's for that whole era, like with Genesis and the Pink Floyd, and it's more of the notes they don't play rather than the stuff they do.
Yeah, well, there was a time when we thought, let's leave some space here. The best jazz, I think, has got space in it. Proficiency-based music can be very wearing. It can be just like the sprint. In other words, you could be listening to or watching sport, and once you've heard the sprint, once you know that that's possible, that's enough, really. I always think, 2 or 3 fast runs should be enough for anybody during the course of a piece, and not every piece warrants it. It wouldn't be desirable on everything, I don't think. No,
actually, I've seen a YouTube video the other day, and there's a guy on YouTube playing Flight of the Bumblebee on an electric guitar, and I think it's about 160 beats a minute.
Right.
And it is just noise.
Yeah, well, there's nothing wrong with the piece. I mean, I work with Devlin Clemmy, who can play that really, really fast on a marimba, for instance. And, she do it as a party piece, as a bit of a, bring the house down thing in a classical gig. But I guess that's it. It's kind of a trick, isn't it? And that's one way music can go. Yeah, it's very entertaining.
It's a very good piece of music as well.
It's not bad, is it?
No, it's quite upbeat. And I've heard it so many different times. So.
Yes, yeah. You could probably do it with tapping.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I was going to say is, who would you say really were your main influences to get you going right at the very start?
Well, my dad.
Yeah?
My dad played a number of instruments, so I used to play mouth organ, and still do, harmonica. That was his influence. He was able to get a tune out of many things, so it was a good introduction to music. Then really, when I was 12, I was listening to a lot of guitarists, the Shadows, the Beatles, the Stones, and then something happened. In 1965, I heard Bach for the first time, played by Segovia, and there was suddenly a revolution in my tiny head, thinking that, oh God, how can anyone play to that degree of proficiency on one instrument in one go, sounding like this, and play so flawlessly? Because up to then I'd heard some flamenco guitar, and I thought, oh, that sounds very clever, a tremolando on one string.
Yeah. Actually, I quite like flamenco guitar as well.
Yeah, me too. I do, and that's very exciting music. but listening to the Bach stuff, I realised that within it, you had an aspect of flamenco within the piece he wrote for violin called chacon, which was a Basque word, I think. So it's a Spanish influence on his work, and so that was huge for me. And I thought, perhaps what I ought to do is go away and have guitar lessons, but then that will ruin the pleasure of being able to make my own mistakes. So I thought maybe one day I'll use an influence of this. So that was huge, and I thought, okay, so I'm growing up, I'm listening to R&B, I'm listening to blues, and I'm listening to Baroque music and Bach, but I don't think these two influences are ever going to come together in a music form. But then I was proved wrong. By the end of the 60s, bands were starting to admit both of those influences. I'm thinking of Procol Harum. There were many bands. Genesis was starting to use that. King Crimson. You get bands who would be as much about jazz as they were about rock, as they were about classical and pastoral songs, and so the forms started breaking down. The spirit was strong, form was flexible, and it was a great era. For a while, it meant you could go on stage, and if your keyboard player could play a piece of Chopin or Bach, he did. And that started to happen again with bands like Muse, with The Resistance. You go off into a piece of Chopin in the middle of things, and another song might sound a bit more like Prince or Queen. I think bands once more are starting to wear their influences much more on their sleeve.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good time for music. Again, it means everyone's welcome.
Yeah, definitely. And there are a lot of great artists emerging. Yeah.
And I think it's a good time for music. Again, it means everyone's welcome.
Yeah, definitely. And there are a lot of great artists emerging all the time. So.
Yes, a lot of great stuff. And I think the fact that you had the majors holding sway, then you had the independents giving them a run for their money, and then you've got the cottage industry, which is the music business as we know it, where everyone's working in their own bedroom, and so no one has to be a Cinderella. Everyone's invited to the party.
Yeah. Right, and I was going to say, and I'm going to sort of mix this interview with a few of your tracks from your latest album. Is there anything in particular that you'd like me to play?
Well, I know you said you Till These Eyes, which is a single, and it wasn't designed as that, but that's the way it's come out. Short pieces. The continuation of Loch Lomond is we've got a little interlude there, and then it goes into the Phoenix Flown. But I kind of wrote it as one song, but people were asking me with the false ending if that was the end of the song and it was another one. So I banded them separately, but Loch Lomond and the Phoenix Flown are kind of what it's all about for me. And there's another one, there's a place called Freedom, and the thing that's before that, of course. There were quite a few of them. Yeah, Prairie Angel, and then a place called Freedom. So I'd sort of run a lot of these tracks together, so it would be an idea of the musical continuum.
Yeah. And is there, any particular song by another artist that you'd like me to play?
Well, I haven't really thought of that. Well, it's funny. I tell you what song I really loved, and the Genesis guys really loved, because when we did a poll, we were all asked what was our favourite single. This was a long time ago. But 4 out of 5 of us, without conferring with each other, and we had no idea, we all chose Richard Harris's MacArthur Park, written by Jimmy Webb. So in a way, you've got the template for a lot of what was to follow with progressive music, lots, different movements, mini opera, operetta, love song, but not just one verse, maybe a second verse, a bridge, an extended workout in the middle with an instrumental section, and then a recapitulation at the end, a bit like a concerto. So yeah, a lot of classical influence, and Jimmy Webb, of course, was influenced a lot by British composers like Vaughan Williams. He grew up in church playing this stuff on the organ.
Yeah. Actually, I like MacArthur Park as well. So
yeah,
it's just one of those songs that does stand the test of time, I think.
It does, yeah. A paean to lost love. It's a very poignant song, but full of heart and feeling, and with a great arrangement on the whole thing. The detail on it is super.
Yeah, definitely. Right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time out to have a chat with me.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks, John.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a very interesting conversation.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, I've enjoyed it very much.
Good. All
Thanks a lot, mate. Okay.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
All right, mate.
All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.